It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Whether or not in Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
I don't mean to sound alarmist, but most of what they let you read is garbage. Most of it's designed to warp our minds until subconsciously you find you'll take the time to lick their boots free of grime and wipe their minds free of tarnish. Oil is the centerpiece, a body count of millions is the garnish. So how's it feel to know we funded every carcass? That every year our taxes pay for carpet bombing Gaza under shroud of darkness? Or that we spend enough a year to house and feed each homeless person in the streets on turning families in apartment buildings in the Middle East to bloody craters full of charred garments? And our media is silent at best. At worst, they can find it in themselves to call war crimes clashes and label children burned to ashes terrorists who played a stupid game and reaped the harvest. And every time we try to paint the truth, the news sends their slugs to suck off all the varnish and distort it into something harmless. See, the media will hang you by your feet and keep you half asleep. So yes, I'm here to set you free, but freedom won't be sweet because you'll fall 1,000 feet when I come cut you out your harness. They say those who dream the deepest fall the farthest. They also say that home is where the heart is. But if home for you is Gaza, Netanyahu's got you painted as a target. Perhaps it's not the impact, but it's what you see when falling that will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the sound of all those children crying out in those apartments that will hit the hardest. Maybe all those little bodies scattered in the dirt will hit the hardest. Maybe seeing human lives assigned such little worth will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the knowledge that you're paying for the darkest of atrocities committed on this earth that will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the knowledge that we give 10 million a day to oppressors who possess the kind of Medicare you'll die in debt before you see that's gonna hit the hardest. Maybe then you'll see you've always had more in common with the commoners whose slaughter we fund every day in Gaza than our senators and bosses. Maybe then you'll see our country never had a conscience. Maybe then the retroactive guilt will make you nauseous. Maybe what hits harder than the impact is the act of being conscious, of knowing your complicity and helplessness to try and stop the bloody deeds of Congress. And that no matter who's in office, America preserves its foreign interests by whatever means its greed demands, however monstrous. You see, we'll always need a place to train our Contras. And Biden's got a backup plan should harm befall the Holy Land. Wipe it off the map, he'll draw it back on with an iron hand. He demands an Israel or reasonable effigy to exercise democracy and colonize the Middle East. Regardless of the human cost of phosphorus atrocities, bought and paid with money they rerouted out the budget for the non-essential things like ever making Flint's water clean. So maybe what hits hardest is the day you see this country for its actual priorities, and never more no honest peace attempting sleep. Maybe then you'll look at politicians making speeches like a blood-encrusted beast espousing destiny to empty seats and fellow leeches. As the gauntlet of democracy extends its brutal reach, like a giant wave of trash come to crash on foreign beaches. Maybe build a base, throw a flag down and heavily pollute the region. Rape your ecosystems, gut your fauna and congratulate you on your new allegiance. Oops, we mean alliance. This is something mutual unless you're non-compliant. We stole something crucial on which you can be reliant. So maybe what hits hardest is the centrists saying both sides need to stop the violence. And those would be the very same centrists saying we should all accept police brutality, who hem and haw and clutch their fucking pearls and spend their time condemning riots. But very soon will come the day the centrists all get censored like the rest of us, and pious as they'll try to be, they won't stay quiet. But they'll just end up shouting in the void that they were also quick to render us subscribers. And it will be too late to light the fires. So far away tonight, they burn the spires of a region set ablaze for which you've paid for every pyre. Which is why your checks weren't all $600 higher. And call it foreign interests or American desires. This is why your checks weren't all $600 higher. Far away tonight there burn the spires of a region set ablaze for which you've paid for every pyre. Call it foreign interests or American desires. This is why your checks weren't all $600 higher. And it will be too late to light the fires.
Brother will kill brother, spilling blood across the land. Killing for religion, something I don't understand. Fools like me who cross the sea and come to foreign lands. Ask the sheep for their beliefs. Do you kill on God's command? Country that's divided surely will not stand. My pastor raised no more disgrace, the foolish naive stand. The end is near, it's crystal clear, part of the master plan. Don't look now to Israel, it might be your homeland. Holy war.
In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right.
We've taken control of the oil in the Middle East, the oil that we're talking about.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create.
We choose truth over facts.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. The foothills of the Himalayas.
Television. We are fighting Satan himself.
Journalists, ask them the question! Ask them! Ask them! Ask them!
Agreed that everybody once they inside they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry. America's dead.
Captain Dan Hanley is a U.S. Navy, served as a U.S. Navy as an aviator for 10 years, United States airline pilot for 25 years. He's a co-founder of 911pilots.org, which is a grassroots organization to find the truth about 9/11 and the assertion of no Muslim hijackers and remote controlled aircraft, which I thought was really interesting. I listened to a couple of your other interviews, and one thing that really confused me is I remember watching the new Pearl Harbor. One thing that really got me was the idea of cell phone towers not being able to reach like 7,000 feet of altitude in the air. And then meanwhile, in the 9/11 Commission, we got all of these phone calls from family members from like making these like impossible phone calls from these like high altitude, high speed planes in the air. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you can't even do that in 2024. How are you going to do that in 2001? So the plane itself is a very fishy story. And the things that you have to say really blow my mind. It's really crazy. So if you just give a brief overview of like what 911pilots.org is all about and just kind of like what your guys' findings are.
Sure.
Started.
Sure. Well, let me just recap what you said and give a brief background on me to give myself a little credibility as a pilot. I commenced flying 55 years ago in 1968, first as a civilian. I got my private commercial instrument and multi-engine rating by 1970. finished college, and in '73 the Vietnam War was still going on. So I chose naval aviation and spent, as you mentioned, 10 years flying Navy aircraft before being hired by United Airlines in 1978 as a pilot. And over the course of 25 years there, I flew 6 different commercial jet aircraft. All total, I flew a total of 35 years in 15 different aircraft, accruing 20,000 flight hours. I don't say this to boast of my accomplishments, but only to make the statement that with all my experience, I could not have flown the 9/11 flight profiles, in particular the Pentagon flight profile, and neither could these alleged Muslim hijackers. And you might say, well, why didn't this come up during the 9/11 Commission? Well, it's because of this, excuse my French, the Zionist piece of trash, Philip Zelikow, who was the executive director of the 9/11 Commission, did not allow one single pilot to testify before the commission as to the absurdity of this ludicrous notion that these hijackers actually piloted the aircraft. And that leads into what we're doing. A group of pilots got together, and I had volunteered to serve as a director and public spokesperson for the group. As you mentioned, the name of the group is 9/11 Pilot Whistleblowers, and its website is at 911pilots.org, and we've got a YouTube channel at 911 Pilots. So the purpose of our organization is to show that there were no Muslim hijackers controlling the 9/11 aircraft, but that the aircraft were electronically hijacked and remotely controlled through employment of a system called the uninterruptible autopilot system that enables a remote source to take complete control of the aircraft autopilot and flight management computer and guide the aircraft to its target. Now, once the system's engaged, the pilots cannot disconnect the system from the aircraft. And before you go tuning me out, saying that I'm some kind of a incredible conspiracy nut, hear me out on the evolution of remote control airplanes, because one of the goals of our organization has been to recruit highly trained pilots from experienced pilots from around the world who have attested on video that they could not have flown. Not only could the hijackers not have flown the profiles, but that they could not have flown them themselves. And on that website, 911pilots.org, I just mentioned, there's a drop-down menu, and there's an item called Pilot Interviews, and you can go to that and you can listen to what these pilots had to say that agree with what I just said. But if you got any questions, Greg, just stop me because I'll keep rambling on here. But
no, that's it's insane. I've done like a lot of the looked at a lot of the links on the website. The Boeing uninterruptible autopilot system.
Right.
Would you could you talk about a little bit the history of this technology? Like how would they get around illegally modifying a commercial airliner in order to have it rigged for remote control takeover?
Okay. Well, if I could, let me just give a brief background history of the evolution of remote control aircraft.
Yeah.
Okay. People that don't believe me, the remote control of large aircraft dates back almost 80 years to 1944, towards the end of World War II. The U.S. Army Air Corps launched Operation Aphrodite in Europe, in England to be exact, where they took old B-17 bombers and gutted the aircraft out to lighten the weight of the aircraft so that they could load it with 30,000 pounds of Torpex, which is a highly incendiary compound. And now pilots were required to make the takeoff of the aircraft, but once they got airborne, they'd bail out of the airplane, and these aircraft were remotely guided to targets in Europe. Now, this is the first example we have of military droning of aircraft, unmanned aerial vehicles. I
didn't mean to interrupt you. So, would they, in theory, be able to take down the towers without a controlled demolition? Like, let's say if the planes were loaded up with explosives, would they be able to achieve a similar result, or is it definitely strapped?
I don't believe that would be possible. I mean, people think I know that the jet aircraft impact damage and the fuel fires that ensued did not bring down the twin towers.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
that
They
did
would,
not
they would
happen.
have to strap it up with
Right,
as
right.
a demolition. Okay.
But anyhow, on our website, on the remote control page, we've got a short video there that talks about JFK's older brother, Joe, who was killed on one of these top secret missions when, due to a malfunction, the aircraft blew up before he had a chance to bail out. So it goes into detail and confirms what we're saying here. But if you jump ahead 40 years, and we could have cited other examples of remote control aircraft, but we didn't. But imagine the technology advancements over a 40-year span of time to 1984, when NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, got together with the Federal Aviation Administration, and they conducted a joint crash test experiment using a 4-engine commercial jet aircraft, a Boeing 720, where they loaded it up with crash dummies and cameras, and they wanted to test the crew and passenger survivability in the event of a crash landing. Now, they took this aircraft off by remote control, flew it around the pattern several times before intentionally crash landing the aircraft. Now, this was 17 years before 9/11, 1984, and they were remotely guiding commercial jet aircraft. Now, if you go on the internet and Google uninterruptible autopilot, or more specifically, Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot, you'll get a Wikipedia article that describes the system we're talking about. But it's very misleading in that it claims that Boeing patented this device in 2006 after 9/11. That's true. Boeing did patent it then. We have a copy of the patent, but we also have witnesses and informants who have stepped forward, desiring to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, who can attest to the fact that the system. Hold on just a second. My battery's running low here. Let me.
No worries, do what you gotta do. Yeah, no, this is crazy. We don't even need the documents about the new Pearl Harbor, the project for a new American century. This is crazy. A controlled impact demonstration.
Hold on.
What?
Yeah. Are you there, Greg?
Yeah. And what would Sorry, continue. I lost my train of thought.
Okay. Anyhow, because we have these informants, we can conclusively prove that the uninterruptible autopilot system was developed in the mid-90s prior to 9/11, that it did exist, it's real, there's a patent on it, and we allege that it was employed on 9/11 to guide aircraft to their targets or to another destination, because there's some argument as to whether or not a missile or an airplane hit the Pentagon, or whether or not it was CGI that was used to simulate airplanes flying into the towers. But we don't even get into that. We don't even go there. I'm always being attacked on social media saying, hey, idiot, there were no planes, or it was a missile hit the Pentagon. That's outside the scope of 9/11 pilot whistleblowers. But that's basically your history of the remote control system. And I strongly urge you to get on the remote control page of our website. There's a number of videos that back up what we're saying that you need to watch. So,
and is it primarily like, so? Because when we read a lot about like a lot of this like online, especially like the Wikipedia article that you mentioned, they constantly there's a lot of, I mean, and there's also technology. I heard you mention the Lockheed Martin Dark Star, which is another one of another version of remote control aircraft. And so what would be, how would they go about lining up a commercial airline with this sort of technology? And do we have any evidence that we can show that like that they of employing this technology within commercial airliners?
Well, we cannot, beyond a shadow of a doubt, conclusively prove that it was used. But when we get into talking about Hani Hanjour you'll see, given the system exists, there can be no viable alternative explanation as to how these planes did what they did on 9/11.
Yeah, and we even have like virtual simulations. I mean, like, I have my cousin's a pilot who does he attests to a similar thing, and we've had testimonies of simulations, or is there at least like some sort of like documentation of like of experienced pilots taking the simulation of the flight into the Pentagon?
Oh yeah. Let me get into Hani Hanger and the Pentagon then.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, that's a whole crazy. I mean, everyone knows this.
Right. Because he's the smoking gun in all this, and when you hear about what I have to say here, you'll see what we're talking about. But Hani Hanger was a 29-year-old Saudi Arabian who came to the States in the mid-'90s to take flight training, and it's well documented that he was a very poor student. In a number of mainstream media articles, they even documented.
New York Times admits it. Yeah.
Right. New York Times, Chicago Tribune, etc. Said he was a very poor student. So much so that he went back to Saudi Arabia and came back to the States before 9/11 and tried to re-enroll in jet tech flight school in Arizona, where he had attended before, and they wouldn't take him back because they said they didn't want to waste assets on him. He was such a poor student when he was there before. So that gives you an idea what a poor student he was. Now, the profile he supposedly flew, it was American Airlines Flight 77 that took off from Washington Dulles Airport heading for the West Coast. He got to cruise altitude for a while and did an about face headed back into Washington, D.C. in a descent. And at 7,000 feet, it commences this descending, accelerating 330-degree corkscrew turn to arrive precisely at the surface without skidding it. And I'm talking a few feet off the surface. This is the without skidding the surface at over 500 miles per hour to strike the Office of Naval Intelligence on its first attempt. Now this profile was replicated in a simulator by another group called Pilots for 9/11 Truth, and it was flown by highly experienced pilots who would crash the simulator when they attempted to do this. And yet we've been led to believe, or we're expected to believe, that Hani Hanger completed this on his first attempt. But it gets even better, Greg. 1 month prior to 9/11, Hani Hanger goes to the Freeway Airport in Bowie, Maryland, and wants to run a single-engine Cessna 172. And when you go to an airport like this, if you're a stranger, you got to prove to them you can fly, so they take you up on an evaluation flight. Well, Hanger didn't go up on one evaluation flight. He went up on three evaluation flights with two separate instructors, a guy named Ben Connor and a woman named Sheila Baxter. And they went to the chief flight instructor at the airport, a guy named Marcel Bernard, and said, "Marcel, don't rent him an airplane. He can't handle it." Now, this was a simple single-engine Cessna 172 aircraft, and I talked to Marcel. He wasn't too anxious to talk to me, but he confirmed this story with me, that they both went up with him, both came back to him and said, "Don't let him rent the airplane." So what did Hanger do? 3 days later, he goes down to Congressional Air Charters, another fixed-base operator down the road, and went up flying with a guy named Eddie Shalev, who came back after the evaluation flight and said he was a good pilot. Now, the 9/11 Commission staff and the FBI interviewed all four of these pilots, Baxter, Connor, Bernard, and Shalev, and got their testimony. But what appeared in the 9/11 Commission final report? Only Eddie Shalev's comment, and it was an end note on the report, and it only mentioned Shalev's name once, where he said that he was a good pilot. Who was Eddie Shalev? Well, he came to the States from Israel. He was an Israeli citizen. He came there 4 months prior to 9/11. And so he had served previously in the Israeli Defense Force. So was he a member of Mossad? Who knows? But he's disappeared off the planet Earth. Some believe he went back to Israel, but That's highly suspicious, but it proves conclusively the commission report that Honey Hunter was the best of the 4 pilots. They said he was the best trained of all 4, and he couldn't fly Cessna 172. Now, what is critical about hitting the Pentagon? Had they just hit airplanes into the World Trade Center, they might have been limited to calling it a terrorist attack. But because the Pentagon was a military installation, the United States called it an act of war and declared war on al-Qaeda by launching an Operation Enduring Freedom and invading illegally without warrant Afghanistan, where 22 years later,
20 years war. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100,000 people are dead. So
can we allege that the plane that, at least the plane that hit the Pentagon, given the military precision that it takes to reach that sort of altitude and speed at the same time, is it possible that we can we allege that this was not a traditional aircraft and possibly some kind?
That's the argument I get all the time, Greg, but people don't realize that the advanced navigation technology on today's commercial jet aircraft is derived from cruise missile technology. And it's extremely accurate. And if you looked at this flight management computer and what parameters are programmed into it, which could be uplink from the ground or downlink from an airplane or a satellite into the computer, okay, it gives geographic points with associated speeds and altitudes for each point, so it defines a trajectory. And this is evidence on an autoland when you're flying into an airport and the weather is below minimums, or down to minimums, and you can only see so far down the runway. As a matter of fact, if the visibility gets down to where the pilots can't see more than 1,200 feet down the runway, they're required to auto land the airplane. And the airplane drives down the center line, the localizer and glide slope, touches down in the touchdown zone, and tracks down the center line of the runway, and the pilots actually have to disconnect the autopilot to regain control of the aircraft. But that is not to say, like I said, I don't debate the planes, no planes, or the missile striking the Pentagon. But if people say there were no planes on 9/11, I go, yes, there were. I was at Newark, and I know United 93 took off from Newark with passengers and crew. What happened to the airplane? So don't tell me there weren't planes. But as far as the Pentagon, if it was a missile, and there's a lot of argument why there were not a lot of airplane parts, body parts, luggage, etc. The hole wasn't big enough, and other issues that people bring up, claiming that it wasn't American 77 that hit the Pentagon. But if it was a missile, then what happened to American 77? Where did it go, and how did it get there? There's people
we have like history of flights disappearing, kind of. I mean, well, I guess you would see some sort of like crash landing somewhere at least, but it is an interesting connection.
Well, do you remember Malaysia Air 370, the 777 that disappeared out over the Indian Ocean several years ago? Right?
Yeah. That's what I was mentioning.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. We've got. If you go to our website again, at the top it says articles, and if you go down, there's a MH370 tab. It gives you a 66-page document that not only describes in detail the profile and everything flown by Malaysia Air 370, but it goes into this in-depth history of remote control aircraft and describes in detail the systems and how they work and how they're integrated. So that's a perfect example. Another one that I got involved with was, you probably don't remember it, but last year, China Eastern Flight 5735 took off heading into Beijing, and from 29,000 feet in less than 2 minutes, it entered this vertical dive and crashed. There was no distress call from the airplane. So far, the investigation has not divulged that anyone broke into the cockpit, that either one of the pilots tried to take control of the aircraft. So I actually wrote letters to the CEO of China Eastern, the Civil Aviation Authority in China, and even Xi Jinping saying, hey, look, I sent him a flash drive with a 66-page document on it saying, look, this is highly suspect that this airplane was somehow electronically hijacked and remotely controlled. And I was put in touch with, I'll call him a Chinese operative. All he would go by was his first name. But he was trying to arrange for me to fly into Beijing, but it was during COVID, and there was a 2-week quarantine, so I didn't go. But I've written them twice on this thing, and they haven't responded. And I look periodically, and there's no final results of their investigation have been published. So I believe that was one. You can go to Malaysia 17. You can go to the Russian Metrojet that crashed several years ago in the Sinai that they blamed ISIS on planting explosives on board. There's a number of different incidents out there that you could attribute to the uninterruptible autopilot, and varying reasons on why it was employed and who might have done it. So,
would you be able to talk about like what your efforts of bringing this to higher authorities? I mean, at least in particular with 9/11, the 9/11 flights. What have you done to bring this up to higher authorities?
Yes,
you been?
I'm glad you brought it up.
What exactly happened?
Well,
when you tried to.
Are you familiar with the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I won't get into it deep. Our organization's been working with them for several years, and they've followed the legal route, trying to force the Department of Justice to initiate their grand jury investigation that they promised into their allegations that World Trade Center Building 1, 2, and 7 were brought down by controlled demolition. And last year it got all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court refused to hear their case. So they're not dead in the water. They're pursuing other options right now, but that was the legal route. And to my knowledge, the best of my knowledge, they're the only major legal action going on the planet with regard to 9/11. That's legal. I decided in talking with them that I would go the political route and talking with the guys in our organization. What we decided to do was because we believe the United States was complicit in the planning and execution of the events of 9/11, we wanted to show to our readers. Incidentally, if you want to join our email list, there's a contact us page. No, there's a join us tab at the top of the website that you can give us your name and email address, and we'll put you on our mailing list. But we wanted to go out to people on our mailing list and say, show to them that the U.S. government was never going to investigate 9/11. And what we did was, I initially started out by calling the FBI in Washington, D.C. and saying, I have information concerning a major crime. And what's a major crime? I go, 9/11, long pause. Well, what's your information? I go, we believe that the aircraft were electronically hijacked and remotely controlled. Another long pause, right? I was waiting for the click for them to hang up on me, but they didn't. They sat and took down the information. They go, well, if we want any more information, we'll get in touch with you, and hung up. So I waited a couple of months and called them back, and they were indignant with me. They said, look, we told you, don't call us, we'll call you, and hung up on me. So I'll make a chart. I went to the TSA, and they talked to me for about 15 minutes and suggested I go to Boeing and the FAA. I tried going to Boeing, got nowhere. So I finally spent months going back and forth because it's very difficult. It's almost like an impenetrable fortress, the FAA. They have a hotline, okay? And I actually wrote a hotline report and got a response. They assigned a case number and assigned me an aeronautical engineer in Seattle to correspond with, which I did. And after one phone conversation with him, he stonewalled me completely, and I wound up having to go all the way back to the FAA again, saying, hey, I'm getting nowhere. Well, that led me to write the FAA administrator, the Secretary of Transportation, the Department of Transportation Inspector General. Then we went over to Justice and wrote the FBI, the Assistant Attorney General Criminal Division, the Attorney General, and then to the intelligence agency, the Director of National Intelligence, Avril, I can't remember her first name. Anyhow, it's not important. But none of them. We have all the letters that we wrote on our website, and we got a response from none of them. Last January, a year ago, I did get the phone number of a senior attorney at the FAA, and I called him, and we talked for about a half hour, and I was explaining to him, look, we've gone to every relevant level and branch of the U.S. government on this. It is an issue. We contend that there is technology, and you've acknowledged it, that exists, that can electronically hijack a commercial jet aircraft and fly, and we feel like that imposes a danger on the traveling public. And he goes, Dan, you haven't proven that it was used. And we said, no, but we've proven that Hani Hanjour couldn't fly. So what hit the Pentagon? And he went silent on me. I said, how did American 77 or a missile hit the Pentagon? What happened to American 77 if it's a missile? And he wouldn't answer me. And he said, look, the FAA doesn't conduct criminal investigations. Go to the Department of Justice, which I had done numerous times. So I went back to the Inspector General of the Department of Justice 2 times and got no response from they wouldn't return phone calls, wouldn't answer emails or letters or anything. So I'm convinced, as is my group, the United States government is not going to do anything. So I wrote a letter. Go ahead, Greg.
Just for asking questions, you lost a 35-year aviation career.
Oh,
and all of your pension and stock.
That goes back to 2003. I spoke out about aviation safety and security issues, and they removed me from schedule when I did it, and wouldn't let me bring in my own attorney. Long story short, they wound up grounding me for life as a pilot on trumped-up psychological charges, which I fought for 5 years and lost my case. But as a result of all of that, I lost a 27-year marriage. It was a good marriage, which alienated my 2 kids who blame me for the divorce, who still believe the official 9/11 story and think their dad's a whacked-out conspiracy nut and don't talk to me. It destroyed a 35-year career in aviation and ruined my reputation as a pilot, and I lost $4 million in pay, pension, and stock as a result of speaking out. So I'm working with another group of pilots on another organization, and we're going to bring this to light. As a matter of fact, on Thursday, I have an interview with a doctor in Arizona where we're going to talk about this illegal grounding of pilots. I'm coming on with another pilot who has lost his job at American Airlines for refusing to take the vaccine. So we're good.
Oh, yeah, definitely email me that link. I'm curious about that.
Yeah,
because to lose an entire career over a botched up psychological test. I mean, you can come up with a diagnosis for anything.
No, I'll tell you what I did though, Greg. I knew in advance. The union lawyers did tell me this. They said if they can't get you professionally and medically, they're going to get you psychologically. I've seen it before, and I did too. So in advance of all this, I went to my own mental health professionals in Atlanta, where I was living at the time, and sought the medical advice of a psychiatrist and a psychologist. I told them, look, here's where I am at United. Here's what they're going to try to do to me for what I'm saying, and I need you guys to prove that I'm mentally stable, that I'm not crazy. So I went to them for several months, and they did testing on me and everything else. And I had this documentation to prove that I was stable, that anything that they come up against me on, I could disprove. It was a waste of time. I told you I spent 5 years. I went, you name it, in the U.S. government trying to fight this grounding. I went to my senators, my congressmen, attorney generals, Department of Transportation, Justice, you name it. I went to them, and they wouldn't. I got stonewalled or paid lip service to at every turn. So I lost a lot, but that isn't why I'm in the fight right now, Greg. It's over 22 years later, and I'm going to be 75 in April, and I could be retired and not even worried about this stuff. But I know too much about the lies of 9/11 to remain silent. and I'm not going, especially with regard to aviation issues, and I'm not going to be silenced. Our heart all aches to the next of kin of the 2,977 victims of 9/11 in the States, but you've got to take into account the next of kin who demanded that the 9/11 Commission convene because Bush fought it for 14 months. And when it finally did in November 2002, they presented a whole series of questions that they wanted answered by the 9/11 Commission. And of the questions that they demanded to be answered, 70% of them were ignored. Of the remaining 30%, only 10% were adequately answered. And again, that was Philip Zelikow, the executive director of the 9/11 Commission, who controlled everything that the commission saw. So the next of kin are sitting out there, but even above and beyond that, why I'm in the fight still is for the millions of Muslims and others in the Middle East and South Asia who have been killed, maimed, or displaced in the Middle East and South Asia directly as a result of these illegal and unwarranted invasions of their country based on the lies of 9/11. I've lived in Pakistan for 14 years. I'm married to a Pakistani, and no, I'm not hiding out here. I fell in love with her, married her 14 years ago. We just had our anniversary, and I've been living here happily ever since. But
Yeah, no, a lot, they operate exactly like the mafia, and that this just goes to show the cost of telling the truth.
right.
I do want to talk about, because we do allege a lot. I mean, there's a lot of other evidence supporting this about the Mossad/Israeli connection,
Right.
To the events of 9/11. And one thing that really interests me is like when I saw a post of yours about Rabbi Dov Zakim,
Right.
and his connection to this remote control airborne flight technology.
Right.
Could you talk a little about that and like a little bit more about what you've seen with like in terms of like the Israeli ties to all this? I remember hearing a little bit.
Well, the person that's really well versed on this is Christopher Berlin. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He wrote a book called Solving 9/11, the event that changed the world. And he is an investigative journalist and an author that has gone in in-depth research on the Mossad-Israel connection to 9/11. I can not even come close to addressing issues that he talks about, but there's so much that does point to it. And characters in the U.S. government who do have close ties to Israel, many of who have dual U.S.-Israeli citizenship, and it all ties together. But getting back to Dov Zakheim, you said Rabbi Dov Zakheim, and I brought that up on Jason Goodman's program in New York. And he's Jewish, and he chastised me saying, "You can't prove he was an ordained rabbi." I go, "I guess I really can't. I just read it a lot of places on the internet." And so I know his dad was. I know he went to Jewish schools, but that's neither here nor there. I don't have anything against Jews or Judaism. I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm an anti-Zionist, and there's a big difference.
That's what they'll always say, right? Yeah. But I think at this point, especially, it's like kind of like evident that this sort of like victimization is like not working too. I really do firmly believe that if we can get the American public to see the connection between Israel and Zionism and 9/11, that we could drop all complete U.S. support for Israel.
I agree. But how do you do that? How do you do that when you're competing against the Zionist-owned and controlled mainstream media and a government that's Zionist-owned and controlled? We do podcasts. I came so close just this morning. I was told they rejected me, but I had an investigative journalist from the biggest newspaper in Pakistan, and whose owner also owns the biggest TV station here, and he was keenly interested in my story, and I thought, well, maybe it'll go somewhere, because I'm sitting in the midst of 240 million Muslims saying there were no Muslim hijackers controlling the airplanes, okay? And I think it would be an explosive story if it ever got out to the 2 billion Muslims in the world about this system. but they rejected me once again.
Have you seen any of this Zionist connection within your like personal efforts to bring this to light?
You mean Zionist efforts to come after me?
Yeah. Whether
Yeah.
it's like any sort of like like you notice like any sort of particular character or person has an Israeli connection, any sort of like just strange either coincidences or circumstances that you've come across.
Well,
that
I've got 60,000 Twitter followers, and there's a bunch of trolls and shills in there that attack me viciously, saying horrible things about me and trying to discredit anything I post about Muslims did not do this, Zionists did, etc. As a matter of fact, that very meme, I have a meme of World Trade Center 7 being hit by an airplane, and at the top it says, Muslims did not do this, Zionists did. And I've got emails from Twitter saying they received notification from the French and German government that your tweet violates their hate speech laws, and they demanded that Twitter take them down, and Twitter upheld my side and said, no, it's not hate speech. No, we're not going to do it. But I know people are out there looking at what I'm saying or doing. But call me an anti-Semite, I'm not. I don't give a damn. I'm going to continue saying and doing what I'm doing. But let's get back for a minute to Dov Zakheim, because he is an interesting character, okay? He's a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen, a Zionist, who served in the U.S. government in some capacity, mainly in the Defense Department, since the Reagan era. He was George Bush's foreign policy advisor coming into the 2000 election. He owned a company called System Planning Corporation, SPC, System Planning Corporation, that was involved in creating drone technology. And one system was called the Flight Termination System, and it was used if, say, they were doing a missile launch test and it went awry and they had to abort the mission. Well, this system could take complete remote control of the vehicle and either fly it to a remote location, blow the thing up, or parachute it back down to Earth for recovery. But this is what leads many people to believe he was involved in the development of the remote control, the uninterruptible autopilot system. But the other interesting thing about Dov Zakheim is 4 months before 9/11, Bush appoints him comptroller to the Pentagon. Well, the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld announces that $2.3 trillion was missing from the defense budget.
Poof, gone.
Gone, right? And these analysts had been investigating where it went. Well, guess where American 77 hit? Well, it hit the Office of Special Naval Intelligence, but that houses the Office of Budget Analysts that killed over 30 of these analysts that were investigating the missing money. Was that a coincidence? We think not. It might have been, but
I don't know if you know Corbett.
Oh yeah, I do. I've got a couple of his videos on the website.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've talked to him, but he has a really good few documentaries, especially the following the missing trillions.
Yeah.
The 9/11 and following the money is incredible and really detailed. But I appreciate that book recommendation. I'm gonna see that.
Like Christopher Bolin, yeah, he's amazing. He was attacked physically in the States. I think he was living in Chicago at the time in the suburbs, and I don't know if that's what led him to move to Sweden, but he's living there with his Swedish wife. And he's people have asked me, well, have you heard from him? Well, I haven't. I've got his email address and his wife's, and I've tried to email him, but he doesn't answer me. But maybe he's dropped out of the truth movement. I don't know. But he's a walking, talking encyclopedia of 9/11 knowledge, especially with regard to the Israeli connection.
This is truly eye-opening. Please, anyone who's interested in Dan's work, please go check out 911pilots.org, and anything you want to say to just shoot your socials and where other people can find more research on this.
Well, I'll tell you, go to the website 911pilots.org and read it. It's a simple read, and watch the videos there, and also go to our YouTube channel, 911 Pilots. And if you want to contact me, we have a contact us page on our website, but also I'm on Twitter or X at Dan Hanley 4, and you can message me there, and I'll get back to you. And I want to thank you, Greg, for having me on the program.
Okay, I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate the time, and keep fighting a good fight, because we need truth out there, and the more, it obviously comes with a price. So
yeah, it did. Thank you, Greg.
thank you for that, Desert Mantis. If you just saved probably like an hour of my time, but thank you. No, that was Dan. That was obviously pre-recorded. But I did want to get a chance to ask him with the NORAD war games, because that's another Corvette feature that has a really good connection with the Boeing uninterruptible airplane system, because they can typically control it with NATO AWACS in the sky. So if they're like at like a certain like altitude higher, they can still control the aircraft. Whatever that is, it's strange. Go to the website. Go check out 911pilots.org. Obviously by myself today. A lot of people are busy doing their own thing. But let me throw this up here. But shit just gets crazier, man. Because every time, I mean, this is the first time I'm streaming in 2024. But holy shit, man! Like as soon as the Jew Tunnels story came out, I'm like, this is amazing. This year's gonna be awesome. Like I was just like, so I really believed like, oh my, like 2024 is gonna be a fucking nightmare. Like it's an election year. There's gonna be a bunch of shit going on. But then the Jew Tunnel story came out, and I'm like, man, yeah. And by the way, yes, I am sitting in front of the Wailing Wall. This is seriously the Wailing Wall that I'm sitting in front of right now. Speaking of which, I do want to talk a little bit about Mr. Elmo here. He did take a little bit of a trip to Israel. Yeah, I know. The Jew Tunnels came out, and I was like, dude, you know what? Life is crazy. Let's fucking rock this shit. Like, dude, were you expecting in 2024 for Ben Shapiro and Elon Musk to pair together to go to Auschwitz? This is second. Hold on. Some real touch. It doesn't get any worse.
Sector. So I mentioned the story of a Czech family camp. There was a family camp for Sinti and Roma
Guys, he's not Jewish. Like he's not. There's nothing. He's He's a white South African. There's nothing Jewish about him. Guys, what else is this about? What else could this be about?
I'm still absorbing, frankly, the magnitude of the tragedy that I witnessed in the place where the tragedy occurred. But I think, and you know, there's this old joke. I've got like this one Jewish friend. No, I have like 2/3 of my friends are Jewish. Okay, I have twice as many Jewish friends as non-Jewish friends. I'm like Jewish by association. I'm aspirationally Jewish.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Can I be Jewish now? I want to be Jewish. I'm aspirationally Jewish. Can I have some oppression, please? I would just like to be Jewish. And it'd be great if I could just have this label. I want to share the label with you. How awesome would it be if we could all be but how awesome would it be, like, instead of like having this like perpetual victimhood with no bounds on just like one group, like what if we're all victims? Let's all pretend to be victims. And then we could just constantly cuck to the same people over and over again because okay.
So I don't, you know, I was like, what are people talking about with this anti-Semitism? Because I never hear it when at dinner conversations. It's like an absurdity, you know, at least in my friends circle.
Because it is an absurdity. I mean, I'm not going to doubt, like, there's, like, definitely, like, some real, like, far-right, like, Nazi, like, anti-Semitic type shit. I mean, people have to understand that there's, like, different, like, sects of Judaism. It's a very diverse crowd. They all believe in different things, and they all fight with each other constantly. So it's really not that big of a surprise. I mean, especially when you're seeing like a lot of the Torah, Orthodox Jews come out and support Palestine in a lot of these protests. So, I mean,
circles.
Elon obviously walked Auschwitz. I said I hadn't been there before.
A symbol for never again.
How do you balance the necessity for free speech with all these critiques about, what is hate speech, what is anti-Semitism, and how do you balance that?
It's difficult to get to perfect truth, and sometimes people have different interpretations of truth, but one can always aspire to be as accurate as possible and to minimize the error between what is being said and reality. Relentless pursuit of the truth is the goal with X, and allowing people to say what they want to say, even if it's controversial, provided that it does not break the law.
He suggests that all of society is a vast pyramid of group identity, and that at the very top are the people who are successful.
We did not know.
Yeah, let's remember that it's been how many months? It's been like maybe like 2 months already.
College campus.
This is a two-sided war. You know, there's like two states happening here. I don't know if Elon knows.
They're also taking place online. A lot of attention has been placed on X, formerly known as Twitter, since Elon Musk took over the company. A lot of users were.
Tour, as you mentioned there, Musk has been under fire for the last basically week and a half since he seemed to endorse an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory on his own platform and led to the outrage and withdrawal of advertising revenue that followed. We're looking at a platform that at this point seems to be losing tens of millions of dollars and charges that he had engaged with this anti-Semitic content and is promoting hate speech, along with a long pattern of that kind of content from Musk in the past, seems to have led him to make this trip. He seems to have gotten what he wanted out of it, posting on X afterwards, actions speak louder than words, seeming to declare that the optics here are exactly what he intended, St. Clay.
And Jake, what about the optics for Israel or Netanyahu? Do they gain anything from his visit?
They certainly do. You have to remember, right, Zinkley, he's not just the CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, and the Platform X. He's also the CEO of Starlink.
Yeah, they get a lot. They're getting a lot. What's going on, baby? It's my doggy. But once upon a time, we did have an Elon Musk that was saying, maybe not pro-Palestine things, but a little bit more, at least more neutral things.
Against an entire.
That this was last year. No, this was, I mean, a couple of months ago.
Hire people, which obviously would not be acceptable to really shouldn't be acceptable to anyone.
Right in the beginning. Right before he got cucked. This is right before he got cucked. Watch this.
Against an entire people, which obviously would not be acceptable to really shouldn't be acceptable to anyone. Then you're going to leave basically a lot of people alive who subsequently, hate Israel. So really the question is like, how for every Hamas member that you kill, how many did you create?
Mm-hmm.
And if you create more than you killed, you've not succeeded. That's the real situation there.
That seems to make a lot of sense.
And it's safe to say that if you kill somebody's child in Gaza, you've made at least a few Hamas members against an entire people.
So I really don't. I mean, something happened, and someone got the phone call. Elmo got the phone call, and you have to wonder why. I mean, look how damning a lot of this is. I mean, do you think there's tapes? I think there's tapes. You don't think there's tapes? There's got to be tapes. Because it's almost like clockwork. And here's another clip that's been going around. Notice these stats. Notice how the impressions are down, but the engagement is up. These are all the pro-Palestine accounts that you're going to find. What's up, doggo? So as that's happening, let's see what the other side is saying. Let's just watch a little bit of what the supposed quote unquote like other side is saying. Does this violate any terms of service? Does this happen to does it happen to violate any sort of terms that's going on right now? Let's throw this up.
I'm saying is if a 5-year-old is in that building and there's some terrorists in that building, goodbye 5-year-old.
This is on
what
Elon.
I'm saying. Goodbye 5-year-old. All right. So they can breed more. That's what I'm saying. If they're in the building with terrorists, okay, most likely they are going to be future terrorists. That is terrorist junior and terrorist senior, or terrorist the third sitting in that motherfucking building. They are all going to meet their maker. Period. Point motherfucking blank. So you can save all that bullshit you talking right there. I sounds all good and rosy and shit. I'm liberal as hell, but I ain't getting that damn liberal. I don't give a fuck if there's like 6 kids in that house and 2 motherfucking terrorists. Okay? Is that if those terrorists are high level enough, goodbye to terrorists. That's what it is. I'm not killing kids. I'm killing collateral damage, okay? And I'm not advocating for killing kids. I love kids. I love children. I cry for children. But there's a greater good, all right? I'm not going to let those people go out and kill a whole bunch of other people because we're like, let's think about the kids and their dreams. Fuck their dreams. Let's think about the nightmares, okay, that they're going to cause those families, okay? We're going to cause those families by not eradicating the fucking problem. Matter of fact, the only thing we're doing is we're not just fucking cutting the weed, we're fucking pulling it from the root, all right? Because that whole fucking stem, that whole fucking weed, okay, will not ever grow again because the root went down with the fucking weed itself. That's where I'm at. I yield.
You're wild, sweetie.
So where's that suspension? Where's that suspension coming? Because we haven't seen that one yet. It's really quite shocking. I mean, when you see, so like when you watch stuff like this, let me take.
Sounds like it could come out of. Always be wary of any name that sounds like it could come out of a George Orwell book. Okay? That's never a good sign. Because it sounds like, sure, diversity, equity, inclusion, these all sound like nice words. But what it really means is discrimination on the basis of race, sex, and sexual orientation. Always be wary of any name that sounds like it could come out of a George.
To you? Like, where does all this stuff sound similar to? It's all the same, like transphobia, the gender, like it all coincides with each other. It's anti-Semitism. It's I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to, say that there's no racism, but I'm just saying like how it's used as a weaponized in identity politics. And the term anti-Semitism is inherent in identity politics. It is identity politics. That's what it is. This was Elon Musk just 2 months ago. 2 months ago.
Go fuck yourself. Now, obviously, you know that there's a public perception that, and you're clarifying this now, but there's a public perception that was part of a apology tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself.
But
go fuck yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel. Don't advertise.
How do you think then about the economics of X? If part of the underlying model, at least today, and maybe it needs to shift, maybe the answer is it needs.
What happened to that?
To shift away from advertising. If you believe that this is the one part of your business where you will be beholden to those who have this view, what do you do?
Do you guys see the game here? It's just like that.
Why?
I I do.
Why?
I understand that, but there's a reality too, right?
Yes. No.
I mean, Linda Yaccarino's right here, and she's got to sell advertising.
Absolutely. So, totally. No. Actually, what this advertising boycott is going to do? It's going to kill the company.
And do you think that
and the whole world will know that those advertisers killed the company, and we will document it in great detail.
But those advertisers, I imagine, are going to say, we didn't kill the company.
Oh yeah.
They're going to say,
tell it to Earth.
But they're going to say, Elon, that you killed the company because you said these things, and that they were inappropriate things, and that they didn't feel comfortable on the platform, right? That's what they're going to say.
And let's see how Earth responds to that.
This.
You see how this is a character? This is a character. These people are characters. So Ben Shapiro and Elon Musk, these people don't operate as they play a very specific role in the whole psyop / duopoly, whatever shit mix we got going on right now. Dr. Shiva talks a lot about this, like how him and RFK, they're sort of like these sheepdogs of the establishment. They sort of like operate as like these these people to come in and operate as whatever. No, I lost my train of thought. But like, as fronts for the establishment, they're fakes of like pretending, being, we see this all the time. Populism is the new trend. It's the great new thing. It's the cool new thing to do. Now we say fuck you to the advertisers, and then next week we're back in Israel, and like now we're visiting Israel two times in a row, and nothing from we're seeing its actions speak louder than words. We're seeing what's happening on Twitter. At least I'm seeing whoever's not on Twitter. It's the censorship is getting bad, and it's only going to get worse. It's pretty much only going to get worse. So I mean, that was really all I had prepared for today. I mean, here's if you haven't heard actually, but there was let me look it up. Oh, right here. I'll share this real quickly. But 24 soldiers killed on the deadliest day for Israel forces in Gaza combat. That's bad. That's pretty bad. We're really that's some pretty terrible numbers for versus a state that basically doesn't have any army at all. They're like trying to say this was like a Palestinian RPG. I'm pretty sure this was Hannibal directive, but we're gonna get more confirmed story after this. I just thought this was a funny video that was put together. This is basically what happened.
מוקשים למסגד לקחתי ולארגז הצנחתי או שבהיתי נתתי ואז הצמדתי או תליתי, תפחתי, חייכתי, צעקתי מי השם אליי?
Very unfortunate. That's what happens when you're a terrorist country. So, sorry. Yeah. It's pretty bad. This is pretty breaking news. So, like, I mean, well, actually, it was today, but like, we're gonna hear more about it. There's still more like people. The IDF is saying it was a Palestinian rocket. There's people who don't believe that. I don't think you should believe that, but that's just what it is. Anyway, a lot of us have been busy recently. I'm pretty sure only INN and Angel are going on. You should go check them out. I've been doing some work for Hotspot recently, actually. This is a good, Nico did a good coinciding video with this whole Elon story. So I'm just gonna close it out on that. That's pretty much all I had prepared for tonight. So I might do this more. I'm not sure. Without co-host, it's sort of. I mean, it's easy enough to prepare. I mean, I may do it more. It's more of like how I feel it kind of thing, kind of like what Lucy does. But yeah, I'll close it out on the hotspot video. Good night, y'all.
Elon Musk joins Ben Shapiro on a random trip to Auschwitz. That's right, while Israel is literally committing a genocide, Zionists decide to drag Elon Musk to Auschwitz because they accuse him of allowing anti-Semitic messages on X, the social media platform that he owns. And just in case you're trying to keep score, yes, Elon Musk has been to Israel, and now he has been to Auschwitz. And no, he has not been to West Bank or Gaza since this conflict started. And if there was a museum to commemorate all of the atrocities that Palestinians have experienced at the hands of Israel, it ain't like he would be able to visit anyway, because fucking Israel probably already blew it up. But my question is, what more do y'all want from Elon? The man has already banned and throttled phrases like from the river to the sea from X. He's already suspended people and throttled people for calling others Zionists. I mean, what else do y'all want? He's doing everything y'all tell him to do. And while he is throttling pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza posts, he is simultaneously not penalizing officials or news personalities who are publishing lies that are pro-Israel on social media or outright calling for genocide. And my thing is, do these Zionists think that visiting Auschwitz is supposed to be some type of gotcha? Most of the Jews who were subject to Auschwitz and survived rebuke everything that Israel has done to the Palestinian peoples, comparing it to the experience they had at the hands of Nazi Germany. I mean, you really have the European Jewish Association taking Elon to Auschwitz like there's a lesson to be learned there about this Israel-Gaza conflict, at least one that would actually benefit Zionists, while you simultaneously have a German Jew from Europe who's a contributor to the largest Jewish newspaper in Germany, saying that there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. Mind you, the same writer says that there's a such thing as collective punishment or collective responsibility for crimes, then this applies to October 7th. Not realizing at all how fucking ironic that statement actually is. I promise you, if you look up the birth certificates of most Zionists, every single one of them motherfuckers say they were born at 12:01 a.m. on October 7th. Because to them, October 6th and everything before that never existed. Listen, Elon, I need you to stop and use your noggin for a second. Right now, bro, Israel's being charged with war crimes and genocide in the ICJ. So, if Hitler were alive today, or if this ICJ were to be trying Hitler in Germany right after World War II, exactly which side do you think Hitler in Germany would fall on? The defendant or the prosecution? I think you know the answer to that. So with that being said, maybe, just maybe, you think you might be visiting the wrong places for the wrong reasons? If you actually want to know what a genocide looks like after you get done visiting Auschwitz, maybe you should go and take a little stroll through Gaza, or rather, what's left of Gaza.